2026 has seen a ton of great new releases, with some of the most notable ones being from indie developers. It's a wonderful trend to see, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be stopping anytime soon. Released earlier this year, but has somehow managed to fly somewhat under the radar, Esoteric Ebb is continuing the trend in great fashion. And wouldn't you know it, it's due in part to the fact that it's taken proven to be loved mechanics from other games and given them its own spin. With any talk of Esoteric Ebb, you're inevitably going to see it compared to Disco Elysium, and the game itself makes no qualms about that. In fact, it leans heavily into that by actively comparing itself to Disco Elysium. And for good reason. In Ebb, you take control of the Cleric. Get that right, the Cleric, as he investigates the recent explosion of a tea shop in the town of Norvik. Its setting is very Dungeons & Dragons-esque, probably because this started as D&D homebrew, and it leans into that more heavily than you might expect. It's a simple setup, but it gets way crazier and intricate the further you delve into the mystery. As you investigate around the city, you'll hear the voices in your head quite clearly talking to you and trying to pull you in different directions. This is where one of the biggest inspirations from Disco comes in, as these voices are represented by the various attributes on your character sheet. You know, the basic intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and the like. Each has a different personality, and each will try to sway you and your actions in different ways, but they also provide unique interpretations of various dialogue and lore according to their established personalities. Strength is a brash idiot, dexterity encourages you to steal just about everything that's not nailed down, and wisdom is wise. Believe it or not. Also occurring during all of this is the first ever democratic election in the land, and there are various different political ideologies and parties vying for power. This is where a lot of people would roll their eyes and dismiss the game as political propaganda garbage. But remember, this game is good, not drivel. I was actually shocked at the amount of nuance present in the political presentation of this game, and I want to talk about it a little more in depth. But without giving you some context as to what the game is and what you'll be doing, it won't make much sense, so let's get into that first. There is a mystery to be investigated, remember? The tea shop? Yeah, the one that blew up. When you start the investigation, you pretty quickly realize that this is going to be more intricate than initially expected. For one, you wake up in the local morgue, having recently been killed after entering the city to investigate. Immediately upon your resurrection, you gotta get back to work, you lay about. Death isn't an excuse to waste time when you're on the clock now, is it? Especially because the whole game takes place over a span of 5 days, so you'll be seeing a lot of the same faces throughout your adventure, and they might ask different things of you at different times of your meetings. If you can't figure out who done it by the end of the last day, I don't know, man, I guess you're just SOL. Now, if I'm being honest, time constraints like this in games are usually something that greatly deters me from playing. I have never finished Majora's Mask for this very reason. Please don't kill me. But I gotta say, I really didn't feel any kind of pressure that I wouldn't make it in Esoteric Ebb. In fact, there were a couple days where I just went to sleep to start the next day simply because I'd run out of things to do. You'll be picking up a slew of side quests, and there was never a time that I felt I didn't have enough time to do just about everything I wanted to do. So take that for what it is, but it is something to keep in mind. Anyway, after waking up, there are two people who want your immediate attention, those being Lord Darrow, a local noble, and Lady Sageleaf, the leader of a goblin coalition that lives under the city. Both want this investigated for different reasons, and you'll have to speak with them if you want any new direction for your investigation. Darrow is the one who allows you access to the tea shop's ruins, so swearing an oath to him is required if you want to progress. Unless you're able to pass an ability check and bypass the magical barrier on the outside of the tea shop. See, I just lied to you. There is rarely, if ever, one way to complete anything in this game. Much like a real game of D&D or Baldur's Gate if you just stuck with the video games, you have free reign to handle quests and obstacles in any way you see fit, so long as the dungeon master allows it. To conduct certain actions or have access to certain dialogue options, you'll need to pass an ability check in the form of a 20-sided dice roll. When creating a character, you'll be able to allocate ability points however you like and select 2 abilities to be proficient in. Proficiency and ability scores will determine any modifiers to your rolls, just like a normal game of D&D. Ebb keeps it a bit simpler in that there's no specific skills like persuasion or sleight of hand, but all of them get lumped into respective ability checks. On top of that, you have various things you can find and equip throughout the game that add or subtract points from your overall score in the different stats. This book is ruined and gives you a -2 in intelligence, but but this sword is sharp, and gives you a +1 in strength. On top of that, anytime one of the attribute voices would chime in with their input on a situation, that is also a d20 check, and rolling too low won't provide you with any further insight. You can't fully read a character's expression if your wisdom is too low, and so on and so forth. Your different scores in this will also determine how prevalent the different voices you hear are. As you investigate, you'll be joined by a goblin representative, Snell, who acts as a sort of foil for the cleric's, how do I put this lightly, buffoonery. Together you will travel all over Norvik and into the dungeons below, referred to as the city beneath the city. This is where you're going to be doing most of the adventuring during this adventure, but other than that, the world itself is firmly planted in a Dungeons and Dragons setting, but it does interesting things with that. Things like spell slots, levels of magic, and stuff that is generally considered mechanical aspects of actually playing the game are treated like natural parts of the world that people deal with every day. You can talk to a demon about the legal implications of charm person, and a spell like Wish is treated like an actual weapon of mass destruction. It's a really interesting take on the setting, but without feeling like some shitty anime where it literally makes reality a video game. I mean, this is a video game, but you know what I mean, come on. Now, as mentioned before, this game does deal with various political concepts, and I think it does so in an interesting way. I saw people arguing non-stop about how the game handles this. Some say the allegory to real-world issues is good, some say it's poorly done, some say there is no allegory and it's all self-contained, and some people got really upset when the strength voice would chime in with something they viewed as quote-unquote unchallenged fascist talking points. So take that for what you will. There are different political parties in Norvik, all seeking to gain power. They represent different ideals and all have their roots in real-world ideologies, even if they're not exactly a like-for-like match of each. Each party has different adherents all throughout the city, and speaking with them will give you good insight into both what the parties stand for and why individuals may choose to throw their hat in with them. You can side with the communists as they distribute illegal propaganda throughout Norvik, or you can side with the nationalists and let them burn it all. You can read a book describing the tenets of fascism and close the book and state how you think it's pretty rad or how it's the worst thing ever. The fact alone that this is present in Ebb shows that while the game definitely has multiple agendas vying for agency, it doesn't beat you over the head with "you're wrong for thinking this way" the way so many games from big name studios are doing these days. You might agree, you might disagree, but the game gives you the choice to do either and also gives you the option to not give a shit. Tell me, in all honesty, could you imagine a company like BioWare handling a vast array of political ideology with this delicate of a touch? If you think that, you probably haven't played a BioWare game since Mass Effect 1 or Dragon Age Origins. Because these days, any kind of nuance goes out the window when it comes to things that writers and developers can grandstand on a soapbox over. And that's not to say that the game's narrative voice doesn't come across as completely apolitical. The different attributes reflect aspects of each political party and speak their piece on the matter when it arises. And it's not just one-sided either, which is also an insanely fresh breath of air. Many times the attributes will get into arguments with each other over why the other's ideals are flawed and explain to each other why different groups gravitate toward their espoused ideals. Willingness to have dialogue on it not only internally, but also with anyone willing to talk to you about it shows the maturity that the material is treated with. I went into this game not knowing much about it other than the fact that you can play as an absolute moron and completely break the game and ruin the campaign. That was honestly enough to sell me on it. But at the first mentions of political affiliations, I was prepared to come face to face with preachy virtue signaling the whole game through. And you know what? That is kinda there. But while that exists, it exists in specific characters that you can delight in fucking over time and time again without punishment. And that goes for any side of the political spectrum, because it's not at all a two-way this is right and this is wrong street. Anytime one of your attributes gets a bit too invested in whatever political ideology they espouse, one of the other attributes almost always comes along and tells them to get bent. If not, you can always tell them why they're wrong. They won't agree, but you ultimately don't have to accept what they're telling you. The game gives you the choice not to, or if you are so inclined, you can agree wholeheartedly. Just don't be surprised when one of your other attribute voices chimes in to tell you you're an idiot for thinking so. But what's truly masterful about the way this game handles political concepts is how it presents them to you. Completing quests that are aligned with different factions gives you the option to have an internal conversation with the attribute that is associated with that specific ideology. The dialogues are presented more as conversations and show and explain how different ideologies have affected and shaped the world, and why they are important and even superior to other ideologies. And what's brilliant is that you don't have to accept what you're being told. There are a few times that having these conversations with them does come across as preachy, but you are free at every opportunity to give a refutation and disagreement with the point they're trying to argue. Some of these moments really made me think about my own views, and it puts a lot of things into perspective, but the icing on the cake is that it doesn't directly attribute any of these concepts to the real world, and keeps it solely and entirely within the context of the world Ebb takes place in. And because of that, it leaves it up to you to make the connections to how you view things in the real world, if you even want to. The charisma voice is almost always there to tell you that it's not worth picking a side on, and being apolitical is a completely valid option. If I'm being honest here, the story and gameplay itself is intriguing and engaging enough to not even concern yourself with the politics. I mean, you'd have to do a lot of ignoring, but you don't have to take anything away from the game other than whether or not you liked it. Coming from someone that generally despises the phrase, all art is political, go watch my Mugenics video if you want to hear me rant more about that, because it's generally used to ham-fist whatever the writer's personal beliefs are with no room for argument. Esoteric Ebb uses politics as allegory, and only asks that you consider or engage with views you might not necessarily agree with. By its very nature, it asks you to listen to what other people are saying, even if you wholeheartedly disagree, because those people don't hold those ideals because they're wrong or stupid. There are very real reasons why everyone holds the opinions they do, and screaming and telling them they're wrong isn't going to make them change those beliefs. I really enjoyed my time with this game, and I think there's a lot to be found for just about anyone who likes the setting and a thought-provoking narrative. Even if you don't typically appreciate politics in games, I still think there's something for you here, even if that is simply just a fantasy game with a cool setting and lore. As mentioned, Ebb does an interesting job of exploring how the mechanics of a Dungeons & Dragons style setting would affect day-to-day life, and doesn't leave things like spell slots and levels of magic to be hand-waved as mechanics that don't need viewed as a factor of life. I recently completed my first playthrough of this game as a charismatic, idiotic brute of a cleric, and I'm already excited to give the game another play to follow leads I didn't before, and seeing the consequences of different actions taken over the game's 5 days. Also think I might play as a cleric that has more intelligence than your average brick wall. Remember to leave a like below if you liked the video, and if you made it this far, I think that means you liked it at least a little. Also, don't forget to subscribe. My next goal is 5,000 subs, and I'm gonna need all your help to get there. All that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!